Okay, and I put up a picture again of the circumplex model in order to put some of this together. We have this subjective experience, we have a physiological response, we have a cognitive appraisal. How is all of this working together? And the circumplex model shows again we have valence, which is going to influence our subjective experience and our cognitive appraisal potentially, and we have a physiological response that is more clear of just aroused versus not aroused. We can measure it. That is our emotional behavior that we can measure clearly. Okay, so I'm going to walk us through a number of pieces of evidence for and against the different theories. And so I'm going to try and make it clear when I'm talking what theory this is really evidence for and what theory this might be really evidence against. But sometimes I might not touch on both of those really clearly, so you might want to just get that picture with the summary picture, or write down really quickly your own kind of summary picture to think through what is this evidence suggesting. Okay, well, one piece of evidence that really suggests that we need the autonomic nervous system experience in order to have to feel an emotion, and so maybe it is coming first. So really, a piece of evidence for the James Lange theory, potentially for Schachter Singer as well, but really for the really clearly for the James Lange theory, is the people who have pure autonomic failure. So all the body systems are working just fine. I'm still, my heart's beating, I'm breathing, and everything's okay. Except what's happening is the output from the autonomic nervous system to the body is failing. So the sympathetic nervous system isn't having the influence that it usually does. What these people report is they have a reaction to stressful experiences. They report having the same emotions as anyone else. And if you're telling them a story and they're hearing about a character, they can tell how characters in the story must feel. However, when they state they're feeling emotions, they're clearly feeling them much less intensely than before they had the pure autonomic failure. And they'll say things like, "Of course I'm angry. That's offensive to say." Okay, I'm trying to do this. So normally when we're angry, you can hear it in our voice. Of course I'm angry. That's offensive to say. But they'll state their emotions and they'll say they're experiencing this emotion, but it's really without the intensity that we feel, that we tend to feel emotions. So I have a couple more pieces of evidence here suggesting that physiological arousal appears to be necessary for emotions, which would support the James Lange theory. One, your author mentions that Botox, so the botulinum toxin, it blocks acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junctions, and so they'll inject that into the frown lines on the face, so the person is unable really to frown. Right, those muscles are temporarily paralyzed. And they report, when watching short videos, they report less emotion in response to those videos. We also see if we give them something sad to read, they read more slowly in that if they had the Botox injection. Another piece of evidence is the facial feedback hypothesis, which I have a picture of how they got this to kind of work over to the right there. So a person would either hold a pen between their lips or sometimes between their nose and lips, as you get that up between your nose and your lips, or in your lips, so that whichever way you do it, you kind of have to make a little bit of a frown, but not really a strong frown. But the other way, so if you hold a pen between your teeth, it really kind of forces you to smile. And then they had them read comics, and the people who had the pen between their teeth so that they were smiling rated the comics as funnier. So this evidence all points to the notion that feeling a body change is important for experiencing emotion. Now I have one more example, even though it's not evidence, it is an example. But the idea is that, or what these people are trying to do is to induce an aggressive, warlike state by creating these particular emotions. And so I have a picture to the right of this particular tribe that originally did this, some Aboriginal tribe, and then in the middle is a soccer team that is using the same kind of war dance in order to induce emotions and induce a particular state within themselves. And I do provide this link underneath, in Blackboard. So is physiological arousal sufficient for experiencing emotions? Is all we need is the physiological arousal? Well, if our heart starts racing and we're sweating and breathing rapidly and breathing in a lot of oxygen, do we feel an emotion? It really depends on the situation, right? I mean, most of us have gone running or exercising at some point, and we didn't feel like we were having some kind of emotion because of that. So maybe not. It really does appear to depend somewhat on interpretation. But if all of that occurs spontaneously, so you're not exercising and your heart starts racing and you're sweating and breathing heavily, you might interpret this increase of activity of the sympathetic nervous system as fear. And in fact, it looks like what panic attacks are made of, that the person is having this physiological response, and then they're interpreting that as being afraid, and that continues on. It kind of spirals out as that response gets even stronger, and then they start to feel like maybe, this gets to sometimes to the point of feeling like you're having a heart attack or something because you're panicking so badly, partly just due to, or really just due to, this spontaneous autonomic nervous system activity. So I'm going to include one more study that questions whether physiological arousal is sufficient for emotions. And this comes from Stanley Schachter, Jeremy Singer, and supports really the two-factor theory. This was their study done back in the 60s, where the participants are injected with epinephrine, so that's going to cause some autonomic nervous system response. Half of those participants are told this is a shot of epinephrine, and you're going to have your heart's going to start racing, your hands are going to get clammy, you're going to get sweaty and start breathing hard. And the other half of the participants are uninformed about what this injection is all about. And then they split those people up such that we have people in this euphoric condition, half of whom are informed, half of whom are uninformed. All right, all randomly assigned. The euphoric condition looks like this, where they are supposedly waiting for the experiment, and they are in there with a Confederate who's also supposedly waiting for the experiment, and the Confederate is just throwing paper airplanes and having a good time. Okay, and then the other half of the participants are in the angry condition, and again, half of them are informed, half of them are uninformed, all randomly assigned to these conditions. And the poor people who are uninformed in the angry condition, you can see this was the not good condition to be in, which sometimes happens to us in psychology experiments. So in the angry condition, they have them sit down and answer questions that are sometimes offensive, like, how many men has your mom cheated on your father with? So it's like these offensive questions, and they're in there again with the Confederate, and the Confederate is behaving as if he's angry, and gets up and balls up the paper and throws it in the trash can and slams the door. So they're in the angry condition. And as you can see from the pictures, what they found was, in the euphoric condition, we have the informed participants not really experiencing a lot of euphoria, although if we're looking at the figures down at the bottom, they're experiencing some euphoria, just not much. What that says there, if I can read it okay, is, heart's pounding, hands are trembling. I guess that drug really works. The uninformed participants are just, if you can read that, just whoopee, they're just having a great time, and they are experiencing some euphoria. For the people in the angry condition, the people who were informed are, again, if you look at the figure over to the right, the data, they're not really feeling any of the behavioral symptoms of anger at all. And again, they're sitting there thinking, heart's pounding, hands clammy. I guess that drug really works. And these are just idealized what they're thinking, but obviously they have an explanation, right, for this autonomic nervous system response. Whereas, again, the poor, uninformed participant who's in the angry condition is experiencing behavioral anger. They are experiencing anger. So this suggests, right, that we have a physiological response and we have a potential emotion to this response. And that potential emotion to the response, first of all, is going to depend on the situation. Am I in a euphoric condition or in a place where I can be happy, or am I in an angry condition, a place where I might end up being upset? And that's going to influence me. But also what influences me, right, is my cognitive appraisal. If I know that what I just had was an epinephrine shot and that, or that I'm going to have this autonomic nervous system response, then all I'm saying is, oh, that drug works, and that's why I'm having this response. And we can have some explanation for our physiological response, and it doesn't influence so much our emotions. All right, I wanted to keep this under 30 minutes, and I'm getting really close. And I put up this summary slide one more time because one of the things I tend to just say here, and again, I want you to think through, what do I really think? How emotion works? Where is that autonomic nervous system response, and where is my conscious experience of emotion and feeling? And so one of the examples I sometimes use for this kind of, so the information goes to the thalamus, and that information is going to go to the rest of the brain. And some of those regions, of those subcortical regions of the brain, are much more closely connected with the thalamus, and that information has to go through more processing. If you go back and think about how vision works, how sound works, that it's going through those primary receiving areas and then being sent for really cognitive appraisal, right, in the frontal lobes. So I give this example, again, just to think something through. This is an example and not evidence, but just something to think about how this happens to us sometimes. So if I see something curled up and winding around in my garage, I might think, hey, that's a snake, and I might become really afraid. I'm having this autonomic nervous system response, and you can feel that, right? This kind of just whoop of your heart pounding and so forth. But a lot of times, so if I have a phobia of snakes, I'm going to run and freak out. But if I'm realizing I'm in my garage and I kind of think about it and I take a second look, I might notice, oh no, that's a hose that's all wound around itself. And so I very quickly have this whoop of my autonomic nervous system, and then this very quick too, right? That's just come down. That's okay, that wasn't anything. And so the question is, I think, when does that cognitive appraisal occur? And does it always occur at the same time with the same timing? And I think it's a very difficult thing to look at, and it's a good question for us to ask ourselves. Okay, I wanted to keep this under 30 minutes, so I'm really getting close. Just a couple of questions we're left with after talking about those different theories of emotion. Is emotion a useful concept at all? Are we referring to the same thing when we use the word emotion, or when we use emotional words? We can talk with our friends about being sad or upset or angry about something, but when we're talking about being upset or angry about something, are we referring to the same thing as the way they are interpreting being angry and upset? We really don't completely know. We've talked about how, are we even perceiving the color red the same? We're calling it by the same name, but are we experiencing it the same? And emotion is so much more complicated than something like color in a lot of ways. We also see contemporary theories of emotion that I'm going to go into just a little bit in the next bunch of slides when we talk about brain regions that are involved. One aspect to contemporary theories is that there's this realization that responses to our emotions can range a great deal, from being really ambiguous to being very specific to a particular experience, to a particular. So whether I'm interpreting myself as being nervous or excited, there's often some ambiguity there, right, of how exactly I feel. And second, is the somatic marker for emotional experience, so that we have certain areas of the brain where when there's activity there, we have a particular emotional response. Even though, so I'm going to throw the monkey wrench right in at the very beginning of next time. We're going to see that here's your brain on emotions, that it's as much, we see as much to do with the task as we do with a particular emotion, as emotion appears to be kind of all over the brain. But I'm going to come back to that somatic marker idea on the next lecture. Okay, I hope you all are having a good week, and that the new normal is starting to feel normal and comfortable for you. I have not gotten very many emails at all from this class, particularly with questions. I think I put the wrong thing in the wrong date in the announcement about questions. So I was thinking all of my other classes are having their review today, and you guys aren't until Monday. And so do think about asking questions this weekend about the review, so that I can field some questions and give some answers maybe. So look over that. All right. Have a great weekend.